Chapter 1. Some secrets shouldn't be secrets at all. I remember many years ago, sitting in the park on a beautiful spring morning, enjoying a cup of coffee after a good workout at the nearby gym. Suddenly, this man approached me. Out of nowhere, he asked if I had heard about the book The Secret. No, I replied, somewhat puzzled as to who on earth this man was and why he was coming to me with this seemingly random information. He did give a brief explanation of this book, which I don't remember much of today. What I do remember is that he had started several companies and was now living a life he had previously only dreamt of. And he said it was all thanks to this book. Then he disappeared as quickly as he showed up. I was left puzzled. What on earth had just happened? Who was this man, and was he crazy? At this time in my life, I had just started to question coincidences. I no longer believed in them because I had experienced so many strange situations where exactly what I was wondering about or needed seemed to just pop up at the perfect time. And it was probably that experience that made me unable to shake off the conversation with this random man. It wasn't long before a copy of the book The Secret landed in my mailbox. And little did I know that that was the beginning of a life to be changed forever. Chapter 2. Don't overlook what's right in front of your nose. Now, this book was my first encounter with the law of attraction. From the minute I started reading it, I was completely absorbed. I felt that every word I read resonated with something within me, and I believed it. So what was this secret, this law of attraction that this book was telling me about? Simply put, it said that the law of attraction means that like attracts like, and that our inner life, as in our thoughts and feelings, create our outer reality. The recipe on how to use it was basically this. Ask for what you want, believe you have received, and all you have to do to receive is to feel good. How I indulged in this book and everything it said was quite special, as it was not something I had heard of before, but still, on some level, I felt it resonated with me. I believed in it without fully understanding why, which was weird because I had had a mind that had always been analytical and scientific and focused on evidence. But this one spoke to something within, as I barely questioned anything about it, which was so unlike me. So I began to actively use it following this recipe. Ask, believe, feel good, and receive. And I received. I got enough evidence that it worked. I was in a good flow and I used this to the fullest. I wanted a specific cabin that I really couldn't afford, and I got it for the price I wanted too. I saw a new house that I wanted and it became mine. Salary increase? Check. Everything seemed to work out for me. I even wrote the main content of a book I had been thinking about for years in just a few days. But then, after a while, something happened. Little by little, old thoughts and feelings that gave me stress and worries and mood swings and fatigue started to creep up on me again. It happened so gradually that I probably didn't notice it until it had taken over most of my days. The contrast was so great compared to the good flow I had been in after learning about this law of attraction that even though I was back to what I had previously experienced as a perfectly okay normal day, now felt like the ultimate defeat in comparison. What had happened? Until then, I didn't even think it would be possible to end up back in such a state of mind after learning about this whole new world and experiencing the magical evidence of it. I believed it, I used it, and I saw it. And then, swoosh, back to the old me. Had I overlooked something? Yes, I definitely must have. But what was it? I picked up the book again, looking for the missing piece. And there I found it, hiding in plain sight. It was right there, in the recipe. Ask once, believe you have received, and all you have to do to receive is to feel good. This far, I had seen the first part of the recipe as the key. If we ask for something we truly want and believe we have received it, that is what I had done to manifest the house, the cabin, and the salary increase. What I hadn't really thought that much about was part 2 of the recipe that said all you have to do to receive is to feel good. Well, I had felt good, but only linked to the specific desire I was trying to manifest. So now that I finally noticed that part as a key itself, I also noticed something important in me. I didn't really feel that good about everything else. At first I did, in the honeymoon phase where I spent nearly my entire days focusing on the things I wanted and feeling good about them. And I didn't have much resistance or limiting beliefs associated with getting a new house or a salary increase because I knew it was possible and achievable. But as I got these things, everyday life slowly and steadily returned. And let's be honest, there are plenty of things in everyday life that can stress us out and make us worry if we allow it. And I had allowed it, little by little, without noticing. And that's what happens to the most of us, which is so important to know because it screws up our vibe. Why didn't I notice until it had gone too far? Well, luckily, from my recent studies to become an NLP coach, I understood that I didn't notice because that's the way my mind had been thinking throughout my whole life up until this point. My mind has learned to respond and react in specific ways to my experiences and surroundings that have eventually been programmed to work on autopilot. Chapter 3. Life is a journey you want to make from the driver's seat. Yes, I had come to understand that all of our minds work on autopilot, and there was a good reason for that. Research says that we have about 60,000 thoughts every single day, and we have to make about 30,000 decisions. So our brain has to do such things to navigate us through everyday life. We take in so many impressions every second, smells, sounds, visuals, and sensations. So then it's quite obvious that we can't pay equal attention to each and every one of them. There simply aren't enough hours in the day. So the brain has to take the easy way out, to think about it the way it's used to thinking. So when everyday life caught up with me, my brain had to use the learned habits and reactions I had built up over the years to effectively react and respond to these impressions. And it became obvious to me at this point that these habits and reactions were not especially supportive to me. Most of them were actually working against the things I wanted to attract. And they certainly provoked some negative feelings for sure. But my NLP studies had also taught me something important about these feelings. It may seem like feelings come out of the blue sometimes, but they don't. A thought always comes first. Or put another way, an emotional feeling is always a result of something we have been thinking. So if I think about something in a specific way, those thoughts will affect how I feel about that something. That means it's the sum of all the thoughts I've had during a day that determines how I feel about it, if it was a good day or a bad day. And what was that recipe from The Secret again? Yeah, that in order to receive, all you have to do is to feel good. So this was when I finally understood that the big question to ask myself was, how much did I feel good throughout the day? Not just when I deliberately tried to manifest or attract something, but throughout the whole day with everything I experienced in it. I could finally see that since my brain was trained to respond with stress and worries related to many typical situations that arise in everyday life, it was very understandable that I couldn't feel that good all of the time. And this is the missing piece to the law of attraction that many of us are not really conscious about, and the main reason why we keep getting mixed results. The law of attraction doesn't just work when we want it to work or when we use it deliberately. It works all day, every day. And how it works is by giving us more of what we are sending out, our vibe, the stream of our feelings that comes from the way we are thinking. But we only really think about it in those moments when we remember it and decide to actively work on manifesting something. But law of attraction means that like attracts like. That means we get more of the same we send out. More of everything we send out, even if we don't want it back. Chapter 4. Numbers don't lie. Reflecting on this fact suddenly made me see so clearly the typical equation that applies to many of us that uses the law of attraction. Let's say we spend 2 hours a day daydreaming, scripting, visualizing, and meditating about the life we want to attract. The rest of the day, say 12 hours, we think on autopilot by reacting and responding to whatever we experience from old patterns and ways of thinking that we have trained our brain to. Now, since our feelings, which equals our vibe, comes from our thoughts, it's how our brain is trained to think that determines how we feel about what we experience in a day. In other words, how we feel during the remaining 12 hours of the day depends on how our brain is used to thinking. Every time you have a reaction to an experience, your brain stores that reaction for a future similar experience. If you have many tasks at work and the brain reacts with thoughts leading to stress, it will continue to react that way. If, on the other hand, it reacts with thoughts leading to positive feelings about your capacity and abilities, it will continue to react that way. The challenge with the law of attraction is that most of us let the brain react on autopilot, and that autopilot is very often working against our wishes and desires. The main reason for that is that we believe problems should be focused on to solve them, and to look for possible danger so we can avoid it. Over time, that has taught our brains to focus on problems and dangers, and to actively go look for them. This leads to us using most of our vibe reacting instead of consciously attracting. So we let our reactions determine what we attract, instead of letting our desires determine what we attract. If we then have many negative reactions to stuff, we attract more of that which we typically react negatively towards. This is how it all played out for me. I had been in that good flow for a while, manifesting and seeing results, so that attracted more to feel good about for some time. But then, suddenly came a period at work with extra workload. My brain remembered from earlier on that these were often periods of stress and lack of time, and so I reacted on it based on that, and so attracted more of that. Therefore, my positive feelings started to decline, and the snowball started accumulating. That is because the brain also works the same way law of attraction does, in such a way that like attracts like. A thought about one topic would affect my next thought about another topic, which in time turns into my autopilot reactions. So when I had gone a while with negative thoughts related to my work situations, and then a new challenge related to something in my personal life arose, my mind continued to think about it with negative, stressful thoughts. And that's how the snowball gained speed. After a while then, most of my days was filled with thoughts leading to negative feelings. So when I then tried to actively manifest or attract what I wanted, one out of two things would happen. Either it became harder to feel good about what I wanted to manifest, because I had built up so much negative momentum during the day that suddenly thinking positively was too big a leap for my brain. Or I still managed to feel good about it because in those specific situations I had trained my brain to feel good. And that's the case for many of us. But what we often fail to realize is that it simply isn't powerful enough. Since like attracts like, and I had spent 12 hours of the day thinking mediocre or negatively, and only 2 hours of the day thinking positively, of course it was the negative vibration from the 12 hours that had the most momentum. It would be something like deciding to quit smoking only 2 hours a day, and then you spend the other 12 hours smoking. So the nicotine and the bad stuff will definitely still be accumulating in your body, making those 2 hours of non-smoking way less impactful to your body than the 12 hours of still smoking. So at best, I attracted a little bit of everything. A little positive, a little negative, as my vibe was inconsistent, so I got inconsistent results. You get the picture. So here's the real point to take away from this. It won't help us to make a small percentage of our days to consciously notice how we think and feel if the whole rest of the day goes on autopilot without our awareness. Especially not if our autopilot is not a very positive one. Your autopilot mind will not get you the life you really want unless you have trained your autopilot to think new thoughts. And here's the real problem. This is where most people think that the law of attraction isn't working because they can't see the results they want. And so they brush it off and get back on with their lives, back on the same autopilot. But you are so close, because this does not mean that the law of attraction doesn't work. It proves that it does work, but it works by giving you more of the same, which is not necessarily more of what you want. Think of it this way. If you spend all your day thinking about something in a certain way, the universe, or whatever you want to call it, surely must think that that's something you want, right? Because why on earth would you spend so much of your energy on it, if not? Chapter 5. The secret behind the secret. So this is how I learned that the most helpful way to look at the law of attraction was to remind myself that it's working all the time. Whatever I think about sends out the vibe that I want more of that, and that is what comes back to me. Now that I could see this so clearly, I understood the importance of being mindful about my thoughts on a daily basis, not just only when I decided to work on attract something. And so I asked myself this. If you truly believe that your thoughts and feelings create your reality, why are you not constantly watching your thoughts? So are your common daily thoughts aligned with what you want to be creating? That's the real question to ask. And that was the game changer for me. Looking at it this way, not as a concept I could use when I wanted to, but as a constant within me. Of course I couldn't take the risk on letting my thoughts run on autopilot anymore. God knows what I would attract with the way I was used to thinking about everything. Say I wanted to attract more money and abundance. I spent an hour a day visualizing buying all the stuff I wanted, but then every time I paid a bill or used my card, I was thinking about the money I lost. How on earth could I then attract more money when I was thinking about it from a lack of money point of view? So I finally realized that our desires cannot be blocked and isolated or from everything else we have thoughts and feelings about. It is our total vibe that decides what we get more of, what we get the same of. Everything we think and feel affects everything we get back, even if it's not what we truly want to get back. When we eat, we can't decide where we want the calories to stay, can we? When we work out, we cannot choose which part of the body to burn the fat from. It's the same principle, as easy and as difficult as that. And I say difficult because now that you see this connection as well, the question you're asking is, how could you possibly get to know your every thought of every day? Well, you can't. But the good news is, you don't have to either. The only thing you need to do is to stop and notice when you have a bad feeling. Because a feeling comes from a thought, and feelings are much stronger and thus easier to notice than a thought. And when you have good or neutral feelings, those won't do any harm, so it's really just the bad feelings you need to notice. And that's not really that hard, is it? So then your next question is, what to do whenever you notice this bad feeling? Well, I have come to learn there's mainly two options. The easiest one that requires least effort is simply to distract yourself. This is what you want to do when you have built so much negative momentum, as in thought so negatively, that it requires too much energy to flip it around in the state you're in. So just do something that takes your mind off it. Listen to a good feeling song, watch something that normally makes you feel good, do a silly dance, or just take a nap. Either one that will pause the momentum you've got going. And this is important because our natural reaction is to try to fix it. When we think of a problem, our autopilot response is to try to find the solution. But we can't find the solution when we are in the vibe of the problem. So take your mind off it and get back to it whenever you feel better, if you must. The other one requires some more effort, so you want to use this one when it's something important to you that you want to feel better about on a general basis, and when the negative momentum isn't so strong that it will make it too difficult to flip around in the moment. This is what I call building bridges between your thoughts. So you notice this bad feeling, and what you want to do is ask yourself, what have I been thinking that led to this feeling? When you have established that, you ask, what can I also think about this topic that feels just a little better to me? And you just continue to do this as much as you want until you feel good enough. Remember, it's your general vibe that counts, so the reason you're doing any of this is just to break the momentum of the bad vibe you are sending out and make it a little better. Because you don't want to be attracting anything from a bad vibe, as you will only get more of that same vibe back. So the recipe is quite easy. You notice bad feeling, and then you either distract by doing whatever stops the momentum, or you build bridges to better feeling thoughts. It's as easy as that. It doesn't even matter what it is. The whole point is just to feel better in any way when you find yourself emitting a bad vibe that you don't want to attract from. Chapter 6. Learn how to walk before you try to run. So what truly changed things for me, and let me stop looking at the law of attraction as some concept to be remembered once in a while and then forgotten again, was when I realized it was nothing supernatural or abstract at all. It's really just about what I'm thinking and therefore feeling most of the day. So forget quantum physics and the universe for a while. It's just about thoughts and feelings, and the fact that your mind is wired to look for more that gives you the same feelings you're having. So I recommend you start focusing on that for a while, and just that. Get to know your vibe, choose to feel better whenever you notice bad feelings. And it will get easier every day as you program your mind to think a new way. First, when you have gotten used to that, and when you are mindful of it every day, is when you can truly master the art of deliberately attracting the life you want. Because by then, you will have reprogrammed your autopilot mind to consistently look for better feeling thoughts that gives you a better feeling vibe, and that's the vibe you must have to attract the things you want. Then your mind will have to look for opportunities and solutions that can give you more of the same good feelings you have created in yourself by choosing your thoughts on purpose. So that is when you want to up your game with tools like visualizing, scripting, and the likes. But the best thing is that already by choosing general better feeling thoughts, little by little you will attract more stuff to feel good about, since the law of attraction is always working and always giving you more of the same. And your mind already knows what you want, because you have been thinking about it a lot, either consciously or unconsciously. So don't be surprised if some of that starts showing up for you by just paying attention to your daily vibe and choosing thoughts that feels just a bit better every day. Suddenly, you won't even have to make time to actively attract something, because your new autopilot will be trained to do that all by itself.